I'm 32 years old, working as an IT professional, and I've worked my ass off to get where I am today. But before I dive into the mess that's become my life, you need to understand my family. I grew up in a typical middle-class household. My dad is in the marketing industry, and my mom's a homemaker. From the outside, everything seemed pretty normal, but inside those walls, things were far from perfect. You see, I have a younger sister, Lily, who's 28 now. And from the day she was born, she was the apple of my parents' eye. It was like they had won the lottery the day she arrived. I don't know if it was because she was the youngest or because she was a girl, but Lily could do no wrong in their eyes. Meanwhile, I was the kid who had to earn everything. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. My parents weren't cruel or anything, but the favoritism was so blatant that it's impossible to ignore. Growing up, it was always about Lily. If she wanted something, it was hers. If I wanted something, I had to prove I deserved it. And even then, it was never a sure thing. It was like they saw me as a future investment, someone who needed to be toughened up for the real world, while Lily was the delicate flower that needed to be protected at all costs. It didn't matter what I did, Lily was always the priority. Lily, of course, thrived under this treatment. She learned early on that if she cried loud enough or threw a big enough tantrum, she'd get exactly what she wanted. And believe me, she wasn't shy about using that power. By the time she was a teenager, she had my parents wrapped around her little finger. She never had to work a day in her life, not even for pocket money. Everything she wanted was handed to her on a silver platter. I remember one time when we were kids. I'd saved up for months to buy this new video game console. It was all I talked about for weeks. The day I finally had enough money, I rushed out and bought it. But when I got home, Lily threw a fit because she wanted it too. My parents didn't just tell her no. Instead, they took it from me and said we had to share. Except, it wasn't really sharing. Lily got it whenever she wanted, and I had to wait until she was done, which was almost never. It wasn't just about the material things, either. Lily could manipulate situations to get whatever she wanted. If she wanted to go somewhere, my parents would drop everything to make it happen. If she didn't want to do something, they'd make excuses for her. I can't tell you how many times I was left to fend for myself because Lily needed their attention for something ridiculous. And every time I tried to stand up for myself, I was told to stop being selfish, that I should be more understanding because she was younger and more sensitive. So, I learned to stay out of the way. I focused on my studies, worked part-time jobs, and saved up every penny I could. As soon as I was able, I moved out of that house. I got a decent job, bought a modest car, nothing fancy, but it was mine, and started building a life of my own. I thought I was finally free from their toxicity. Little did I know, I was wrong. Lily got married at 24 to a man named Thomas. He was older, wealthy, and honestly, way out of her league. My parents were over the moon. They saw it as Lily finally living up to her potential, marrying into money and securing her place in high society. The wedding wasn't a pretty big affair, of course, all funded by Thomas's family. My parents couldn't have been prouder if they tried. They saw this marriage as their ticket to a better life through Lily. But Lily was still Lily. She had no concept of money because she'd never had to work for anything. She spent Thomas's money like water, buying expensive clothes, jewelry, and taking luxury vacations. I remember sitting through family dinners where my parents would gush over how well Lily was doing, how perfect her life was, and how lucky she was to have found such a generous husband. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass at work, but none of that mattered to them. The cracks in Lily's marriage started showing pretty quickly. Thomas wasn't the type to tolerate her spending habits for long. They argued constantly, and Lily would come crying to our parents, who always took her side. They blamed Thomas for everything, saying he wasn't treating her the way she deserved to be treated. I could see the writing on the wall long before it happened. Divorce was inevitable. And sure enough, after 4 years, Lily was back living with my parents, her marriage in shambles. Lily had actually signed the prenuptial agreement with Thomas, which meant she couldn't get anything out of the divorce, which was extremely smart of him. My parents were devastated, not just for Lily but for themselves. They had banked on this marriage being their way into a higher social circle, and now it was over. But instead of letting Lily face the consequences of her actions, they doubled down on their favoritism. They coddled her even more, showering her with gifts, paying for expensive vacations to help her heal, and making sure she never had to deal with the reality of her situation. Lily was more spoiled than ever, and my parents were completely blind to it. To them, Lily was the victim, and they were her saviors. They didn't care about how much it cost them or what it meant for their own financial security. They were determined to keep their princess happy, no matter the cost. And once again, I was left to watch from the sidelines, disgusted but powerless to do anything about it. Things took a turn for the worse a few months ago when I got a great opportunity at work. It was a short-term assignment that required me to travel frequently. The pay was excellent, and it was a chance to gain some valuable experience. Since I didn't need my car while traveling, I decided to leave it at my parents' house. It was close to the airport, and I trusted that they'd take care of it. I'd always taken pride in my car. It was a symbol of my independence, a reminder that I'd made it on my own terms. Leaving my car there seemed like a no-brainer. I knew my parents weren't thrilled about the divorce and all the drama with Lily, but I figured the car would be safe there. I was wrong. So very wrong. After 2 months of traveling, I came back home for a weekend visit. I was tired from all the work and just wanted to relax. But when I pulled up to my parents' house, something felt off. My car wasn't in the driveway. At first, I thought maybe they'd parked it in the garage, but when I asked my mom where the car was, she just looked at me with this blank expression and said, "Oh, we sold it to someone." I remember standing there, just staring at her, not able to process what she was saying. "You sold it?" I finally asked, thinking this had to be some kind of sick joke. "Yes," she replied, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "We needed the money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What do you mean you needed the money? That was my car." She didn't even flinch. "Well, Lily's been having such a hard time with the divorce, and we wanted to do something special for her. So we sold the car and used the money to send her on a vacation to Europe. She needed it more than you did." At that moment, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was outright betrayal. They had sold my car, without even asking me, and all for Lily. And the worst part was, they didn't even seem to care. I felt anger like I'd never felt before. "How could you do that?" I demanded. "That was my car. I worked for years to save up for that, and you just sold it like it was nothing." My dad, who had been silent up until this point, finally chimed in. "It's just a car, son. You can always buy another one. But Lily needed this. She's been through so much, and we wanted to help her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you think her needing a vacation is more important than my car? You think it's okay to just take something that belongs to me and sell it without even asking?" My mom sighed, like she was dealing with a child throwing a tantrum. "You're overreacting. We did what we had to do for the family. Lily needed us, and we did what was necessary. You're doing well for yourself. You can afford to buy another car. She needed this to recover." Their lack of remorse, their complete disregard for how I might feel, was like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe that after everything I'd done for them, they would treat me like this. I was furious, but more than that, I was hurt. I had always been the responsible one, the one who did the right thing, and this was how they repaid me. As if things couldn't get worse, Lily walked in at that moment, fresh off her European vacation. She looked tanned, rested, and completely unbothered by the whole situation. "Oh, you're back," she said with a smile, completely ignoring the tension in the room. I turned to her, my anger boiling over. "Did you know they sold my car to pay for your vacation?" She didn't even blink. "Yeah, they mentioned it. I thought you wouldn't mind." "You thought I wouldn't mind? That was my car. My car, that I worked years to save up for, and you just took it without asking?" Lily rolled her eyes like I was being unreasonable. "It's just a car, bro. You can always buy another one. Besides, I really needed this vacation. It was the only thing that's made me feel better since the divorce. You should be happy for me." Happy for her? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was beyond entitlement. This was pure narcissism. I could feel my blood pressure rising. This wasn't just about the car. This was about years of being overlooked, ignored, and treated like I didn't matter. And now, they had finally crossed a line that I couldn't ignore. I didn't say anything else. I just turned and walked out of the house. I needed to get out of there before I did something I'd regret. But as I drove away, my mind was already racing with thoughts of how I could make them pay for what they'd done. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. My parents had taken something that was mine and sold it without a second thought. And Lily, she was completely unapologetic. She didn't care about what it cost me, as long as she got what she wanted. It was time to put an end to this. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I started planning my revenge. It wasn't just about getting back at them for the car. It was about making them realize that they couldn't keep treating me like this. I had always been the responsible one, the one who made sacrifices for the sake of the family. But not anymore. This time, I was going to put myself first. The first thing I did was cut them off financially. Over the years, I'd helped them out in more ways than I could count. I'd lent them money, helped them pay bills, and even set up a joint account for emergencies. But after what they did, I wasn't going to support them anymore. I withdrew all the money from the joint account and closed it. I also took back the credit card I'd given them for essentials. If they wanted to live beyond their means, they'd have to figure it out on their own. But that was just the beginning. I knew that my parents relied on me for more than just money. I had helped them with their finances, managed their accounts, and even handled their taxes. Without me, they were clueless. So, I decided to make things even more difficult for them. I went through all the accounts I had access to and started systematically cutting them off. They had a backup car that I'd helped them purchase, and guess what? It was in my name. I sold it to recoup some of my losses, leaving them without a vehicle. The fallout was immediate. My parents were furious when they realized what I'd done. They called me repeatedly, demanding that I return the money, the car, everything. But I ignored them. I was done being their doormat. If they wanted to continue their lavish lifestyle, they'd have to do it without my help. For the first time in my life, I had the upper hand. My parents were in shock. They had never expected me to stand up to them like this. They tried everything to guilt trip me. My mom called, crying, saying that I was being cruel, that they were just trying to help Lily during a difficult time. My dad tried to reason with me, saying that family was more important than money and that I was overreacting. But I wasn't buying it. I'd heard all their excuses before, and I was done listening. This wasn't about money, it was about respect. They had never respected me, never valued what I brought to the table. They had taken me for granted for too long, and now they were paying the price. Lily, of course, was livid. She came to my apartment, demanding that I fix everything, saying that I was ruining her life. But I stood my ground. I told her that she needed to start taking responsibility for her own actions and that I wasn't going to bail her out anymore. She didn't take it well, to say the least. She screamed at me, called me every name in the book, and even threatened to cut me out of her life. But I didn't care. In fact, I welcomed it. If being cut off from Lily meant not having to deal with her drama anymore, then so be it. I was done sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of my family. As for my family, I went no contact. They tried to reach out a few times, but I ignored their calls and texts. I knew that if I let them back into my life, nothing would change. They would go back to their old ways, and I would end up right where I started. I wasn't going to let that happen. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And for the first time in a long time, I was truly happy. Final update. It's been a while since I last shared my story, and a lot has happened since then. For those who don't know, I cut off contact with my parents and my sister, Lily, after they sold my car without my permission to fund Lily's lavish vacation. The betrayal was the last straw in a long history of favoritism and mistreatment. Since then, I've made some significant changes in my life, and I wanted to provide an update on what's happened since. The reason I'm sharing this update is because I've been reflecting on everything that's happened, and I think it's important to share where I am now. The advice and support I received after my original post were overwhelming, and they helped me navigate the difficult decisions I had to make. I want to share what's been going on, how my family has responded, and where I stand now. When I first posted about what happened, I didn't expect the sheer volume of responses that poured in. The general consensus was clear: I wasn't wrong to cut off my family, and most people agreed that it was a long overdue step toward reclaiming my own life. Initially, reading through the comments was both validating and overwhelming. I'd always known that my family's behavior wasn't normal, but seeing so many people agree with me and affirm my feelings was something I hadn't anticipated. It made me realize just how much I'd been gaslit over the years into thinking I was overreacting or being selfish for wanting to stand up for myself. One of the most common pieces of advice I received was to stay firm in my decision and to not let guilt or manipulation pull me back into their toxic orbit. It was advice I took to heart. I knew that if I allowed myself to be drawn back in, nothing would change, and I'd end up in the same miserable situation I'd been in for years. After I went no contact, it didn't take long for my parents to start trying to reach out. At first, they bombarded me with calls and messages, which I ignored. When that didn't work, they started showing up at my apartment, trying to talk to me in person. This was when I decided to take more serious action. I filed for a restraining order against them, which was granted given the harassment and emotional distress they were causing. Even with the restraining order in place, my parents found ways to get messages to me. They had friends and extended family members send emails or leave voicemails on their behalf. The messages were a mix of apologies, excuses, and guilt trips. They'd say things like, "We're so sorry for what happened, we never meant to hurt you," followed by, "But you have to understand, Lily was going through a tough time, and we were just trying to help her." It was the same pattern as before, apologizing just enough to make it seem like they were remorseful, but never fully taking responsibility for their actions. They still didn't understand, or maybe they didn't want to understand, that what they did was wrong, not just because they sold my car, but because of how they had always put Lily first, no matter the cost to me. Lily, on the other hand, took a different approach. She tried to play the victim, sending me long, emotional messages about how sorry she was and how much she needed me in her life. She claimed that she'd had a wake-up call after I cut her off and that she was working on becoming a better person. But her words felt hollow to me. I'd seen her act remorseful before, only to go right back to her old ways once she got what she wanted. This message was also sent through a family member. Despite her claims of change, Lily's messages were still laced with entitlement. She would say things like, "I know I messed up, but we're family, and family should always forgive each other." It was clear that she still believed she was owed forgiveness simply because she was my sister, not because she had truly changed. My response to all of this was simple: I didn't respond at all. I knew that engaging with them would only open the door for more manipulation, and I wasn't willing to go down that road again. With the restraining order in place and my family's attempts at reconciliation falling flat, I turned my attention to more practical matters, namely, the financial and legal fallout from cutting them off. One of the first things I did was to ensure that my finances were completely secure. I closed all joint accounts, changed passwords, and even moved my money to a different bank. I didn't want to give them any opportunity to try and manipulate me financially, which was something they had done in the past. I also had to deal with the legal process of getting compensation for my car, which had been sold without my permission. The legal battle was long and drawn out, but eventually, I did receive compensation. It wasn't as much as I had hoped for, but it was enough to help me move on. I used the money to upgrade my new car, which felt like a small victory. As for my parents, their financial situation took a significant hit after I cut them off. Without my support, they struggled to maintain the lifestyle they had become accustomed to. They were forced to downsize, selling their home and moving into a smaller, less expensive place. I heard through mutual contacts that they were having a hard time adjusting, but I had no sympathy. They had spent years living beyond their means, counting on me to bail them out when things got tough. Now, they were finally facing the consequences of their actions. Lily's situation was even more precarious. Without the financial cushion provided by our parents, she was forced to get a job, something she had never done before. From what I heard, she struggled to hold down any position for long. Her entitled attitude and lack of work ethic made her a nightmare employee, and she bounced from job to job, never lasting more than a few weeks at any place. Despite her claims of wanting to change, it was clear that Lily hadn't learned anything from the situation. She continued to live in a fantasy world where she was the victim, and everyone else was to blame for her problems. Her financial independence was more of a facade than a reality, and it wasn't long before she started reaching out to extended family members, trying to guilt them into supporting her. The decision to go no contact was one of the hardest I've ever made, but it was also the most necessary. It wasn't just about punishing them for what they did, it was about protecting myself from further harm. I realized that as long as they were in my life, I would never be truly free. I would always be caught in their web of manipulation, guilt, and favoritism. In the months since, I've found a sense of peace that I never thought was possible. That's not to say that it's been easy. There are still moments when I feel guilty, when I wonder if I made the right choice. But then I remind myself of everything I endured, and I know that I did what was necessary to protect my own well-being. As for the possibility of reconciliation, I've thought about it a lot. I won't lie and say that the idea hasn't crossed my mind. After all, they're still my family, and there's a part of me that misses the connection we once had, even if it was toxic. But I also know that any reconciliation would come with conditions, boundaries that they would have to respect, and a genuine acknowledgement of the harm they've caused. If I were to even consider reconnecting with them, they would need to take full responsibility for their actions, not just in the recent past, but for the years of favoritism and manipulation that I endured. They would need to show that they've changed, that they're willing to respect my boundaries and treat me as an equal, not as someone who exists solely to serve their needs. Lily, too, would need to demonstrate that she's truly changed. I would need to see real, tangible evidence that she's taken steps to become a better person, whether that's holding down a job, learning to be financially independent, or simply showing more empathy and consideration for others. But the truth is, I'm not sure if they're capable of that kind of change. They've spent so many years in their toxic patterns that I don't know if they can break free from them. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my own happiness and well-being on the slim chance that they might change. That said, thank you to everyone who has supported me so far. Your advice and encouragement have meant the world to me, and I'm grateful to have this community to turn to as I continue on this journey.